Domingo Pace crossed the Tungabhadra River in the monsoon of 1520. The Portuguese horse trader expected a provincial capital. He found a city that stretched beyond the horizon. Vijayanagar covered 64 square kilometers. Rome at its peak covered 14. The bazaars of Hampi traded diamonds by weight. Temple spires rose higher than any cathedral in Lisbon. Pace wrote one sentence that survived 5 centuries. I have seen nothing like it. 45 years later, Vijayanagar was a field of blackened stone. The city was not merely conquered. It was erased. No European city in the 16th century came close. Vijayanagar held 500,000 souls. London held 60,000. Persian chronicler Abdur Razak entered the city in 1443. He recorded 7 concentric rings of fortification walls. Each ring enclosed a different world. The outer rings held farms and villages. The inner rings held markets, temples, and palaces. At the center stood the royal enclosure of Krishna Deva Raya, the emperor who turned a kingdom into the richest empire south of the Himalayas. The Virupaksha Bazaar ran for a kilometer. It never closed. Arabian horses changed hands beside stacks of pepper. Diamonds from the Golconda mines were sold by weight on street corners. Silk from China. Spices from the Moluccas. Ivory from Africa. Portuguese merchant Fernão Nunes estimated the annual royal revenue at 12 million gold coins. Adjusted for inflation, that figure exceeds the GDP of several modern nations. The bazaar was not a market. It was the beating heart of global trade in the Indian Ocean. A Portuguese visitor stationed in the city wrote home about the water. The Deccan Plateau is dry. The monsoon lasts 3 months. The rest of the year, the land bakes. Vijayanagar solved this with aqueducts that carried the Tungabhadra into every quarter. Stone canals. Stepwells. Irrigated fields that fed 500,000 people. The visitor wrote that the city had more water in the dry season than Lisbon had in the wet. 7 concentric walls. Each one higher than the last. Every wall was built from granite blocks cut so precisely that no mortar was needed between them. The outer perimeter stretched 40 kilometers. Watchtowers rose at regular intervals. The gates were angled so that battering rams could not approach head-on. Vijayanagar's defenses were designed to break any army. For 2 centuries, no enemy breached them. The walls did not fail Vijayanagar. Something far more dangerous did. Krishna Deva Raya held court in the Darbar Hall. The platform was carved from a single block of black stone. Ambassadors from Persia, Portugal, and China knelt before him. The emperor was a warrior who had never lost a battle. He was also a poet who composed verses in Telugu and Sanskrit. His reign marked the peak of Vijayanagar's power. The empire stretched from the Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal. No force in the Deccan could challenge it alone. The Vitla temple housed 56 musical pillars. Each pillar, when struck, produced a different note. The stone itself sang. The Virupaksha temple rose 50 meters above the bazaar. Its central tower was visible from every corner of the city. The temples were not merely places of worship. They were statements. Vijayanagar was telling every visitor the same thing. This empire is eternal. The gods themselves live here. The architects did not know they were building a monument that would outlast the civilization that built it. I entered the city through the eastern gate in the month of September. The rains had ended. The streets were washed clean. I walked past stalls selling fabric I had never seen. I passed temples where the stone pillars sang when struck. I reached the central bazaar at dusk. The lamps were being lit. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever witnessed. I wrote in my journal that night, "No city in Christendom compares." I did not know I was recording the last generation of a dying empire. The Deccan Sultanates watched Vijayanagar's rise with growing alarm. 4 Muslim kingdoms surrounded the Hindu empire. Bijapur, Golconda, Ahmednagar, Bidar. Individually, none could match Vijayanagar's army. Together, they could field a force that outnumbered the capital 2-1. In 1564, the 4 sultans formed an alliance. They set aside centuries of mutual hatred. Their combined army marched south. Vijayanagar had not faced an existential threat in 200 years. It was about to. The armies met near the Krishna river on the 23rd of January, 1565. Vijayanagar fielded 100,000 soldiers. The Sultanate coalition brought 140,000. Sultanate heavy cannons, loaded with copper contrast shot, tore through Vijayanagar's ranks. Yet by afternoon, Vijayanagar was winning. The Sultanate lines were breaking. Then two trusted generals commanding Vijayanagar's artillery turned their cannons on their own infantry. The Gilani brothers betrayed the crown. The guns meant to defend Vijayanagar destroyed it. The battle became a massacre. Vijayanagar's army disintegrated. The emperor's general, Raya, was captured on the field. The sultans executed him personally. His severed head was mounted on a spear and paraded through the sultanate ranks. The victors did not pause to consolidate. They marched directly to the capital. The city that had repelled every invader for 2 centuries stood undefended. Its army was dead. Its walls meant nothing without soldiers to man them. The Sultanate armies entered Vijayanagar through the same eastern gate Domingo Pace had crossed 45 years earlier. What followed was 6 months of systematic destruction. Temples were toppled. Palaces were burned. The bazaars were stripped of every coin. The aqueducts were smashed. The stepwells were filled with rubble. 500,000 inhabitants fled or were slaughtered. When the sultans finally withdrew, they left behind a ruin so complete that Vijayanagar was never rebuilt. Not in 500 years. The Portuguese returned to the site a decade later. They found jungle reclaiming the streets. Trees growing through temple courtyards. The musical pillars still stood, but no one remained to strike them. The Vijayanagara Empire did not merely collapse. Colonial historians reduced the southern titan to a regional footnote. Rome and Constantinople filled the global canon. The richest city in the medieval world became a paragraph. A ruin. A ghost. The global historical consensus sidelined the southern empires. Colonial scholars curated what mattered, and standard curricula reflected that bias for generations. The diaspora inherits the same omission their ancestors were handed. This video is a correction. That correction is not an argument. It is evidence arranged in chronological order. What you conclude is yours. Vijayanagar was larger than Rome. It was richer than any European kingdom of its era. It was burned for 6 months and abandoned forever. The Portuguese chronicler who stood in its bazaars recorded his awe. The Persian ambassador who walked its streets recorded his disbelief. Both accounts survived. The city did not. The ledger still exists. The eyewitness testimony still exists. The ruins still stand in the Deccan sunlight. The world forgot its size. The world forgot its wealth. History almost forgot the city entirely. If you believe history belongs to evidence rather than erasure, subscribe to uncover the empire's time forgot.